8.4, and it's about something called absolute value. Could I have a volunteer read the learning target where it says LT for learning targets? Sash?
I can understand the concept of absolute value.
Thank you. So absolute value is the distance between a number and 0 on the number line. The way that we indicate absolute value, the symbols we use, it looks like this. It's like two vertical lines that are surrounding the number. It almost looks like number ones, except normally they are taller than the number, so you can tell it's not a 1, and instead are these two lines surrounding it. So it's kind of like parentheses, but they're just straight lines, straight vertical lines. So the way that we would say that out loud is the absolute value of A. So we say absolute value of whatever number is inside those symbols. And the way we figure out what that number is going to be is however far away our number is from 0 on a number line. So if you look at this one right here, it says the absolute value of 2. So that's asking how far away is 2 from 0 on a number line. It's 2 units away. So its absolute value is 2. Now if we look at instead negative 2, the absolute value of negative 2 is also 2 because it is 2 units away from 0. It's just on the other side. So one really important thing about absolute value is that it is always positive. See how that was positive as was that? So I want you to add like a little note that says always positive. Because distance is always positive. Right? You don't travel negative 100 miles, you travel 100 miles. So now we're going to go ahead and try a couple problems out. So this one says find the absolute value of 3. Just to practice how we would write that, it would look like this. A 3 inside 2 vertical lines. Make sure you write that on your paper so you know that's what this means. When it says absolute value of 3, that's what it would look like mathematically. And again, that's how far away is this number from 0 on a number line. So if I draw a picture to figure it out, here's my 0, and then here's my 3. 1, 2, 3. And the distance between those is the absolute value. So what is the distance between those, Ratisha? It's 3 units away. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. Questions about that one? Okay, the next one says find the absolute value of negative 2.5. Again, the way we show that mathematically looks like this. We put the number inside those 2 vertical lines just like that. And if we draw a picture to show what's going on, this time 0's over on the right-hand side. I'm going to do, this is negative 1. This is negative 2, and then I'll do the halfway marks in between. So there's negative 2.5 out here. What's the distance between those from negative 2.5 to 0? What's the distance between those? How far away is that from 0? Neil? 2.5. 1, 2.5. So the absolute value of negative 2.5 is 2.5. So if you haven't caught on already, because absolute value is the distance that a number is from 0, absolute value is always just the number itself. But if the number is negative, we make it positive. If the number is positive, we keep it positive because absolute value is always positive because distance is always positive. So we're going to do a few out loud examples to get a little bit more practice. So I want all of you to respond to this. I know I can tell everybody's a little sleepy this morning, but do your best to come up with the answer and say it out loud. Starting with, what is the absolute value of 10?
10.
What is the absolute value of negative 10?
10.
It's still 10 because, remember, it is always positive. What is the absolute value of negative 4?
4.
What's the absolute value of 4?
4.
It's both 4. What's the absolute value of 1.2?
1.2.
What's the absolute value of negative 3.5? Just 3.5. Positive 3.5. Absolute value is always positive. What is absolute value?
Always positive.
Always positive. So now we're going to do two other examples where we're going to introduce just a little bit extra besides just naming the absolute value of something. This question says compare 2 and the absolute value of -5. So what that means is decide which one is greater. If I had to put one of my, greater than, less than symbols in between, which one would be greater? Let's start with, what is the absolute value of -5? Who can tell us what that is? Dash? So then who can tell us which one of these is greater? Is it the 2 or is it the absolute value of -5? Raise your hand if you can answer it for us. Grayson? 5 is greater than 2, but then out of these two things, what does that mean? Which one is greater? Shelby? Not exactly. So Grayson just said 5 is greater than 2. That is true. But then out of these two things, because remember, these are the two things that I'm comparing, which one is greater? Grayson, you want to? What? The absolute value of -5. Because this one is 5. That is what it equals, and that is greater than 2. The reason I'm being so specific is because when you write your comparison, this still has to look like that. We don't want to trade it out with a 5. We just want to know and remember that that would equal 5, and that's why it's greater. And then the next one here, it says compare the absolute value of 3.5 and -1. So again, I'm comparing those two things. Who can raise their hand and tell us what the absolute value of 3.5 is? Aubrey? So then who can raise their hand and tell us which one is greater out of these? Mia?
3.5.
Close. Dash?
The absolute value of 3.5.
Yeah, because that has the absolute value symbols around it, and we want to remember that we have to leave it that way. So what we're saying is the absolute value of 3.5 is greater than -1. Yes, that equals 3.5, but when we're comparing, we want to leave it in the form that we had it. That was like, if you guys remember back in our percents chapter, there were ones where you had to order like fractions, decimals, and percents from least to greatest, and remember you had to leave them in their original form. So even though you might have changed everything to a percent to see what was greater or less, when we wrote our list, we kept it in the original form. Questions about that one? Okay.